All right, so let's get started. Chapter 1. This is our introduction. We're going to talk about that income tax formula and take a closer look at the Form 1040 and how it's set up. So our learning objectives for this chapter, we're going to talk about the difference between a progressive, proportional, and a regressive tax structure. I know you don't know what those terms mean yet, but you will, and they will make sense once we get into that. We're also going to talk about marginal versus average tax rates. Okay, marginal tax rates are a feature of progressive tax structures, okay, of which the U.S. income tax is a part. I probably said that. That was really poor English. But but average tax rate is different from your marginal tax rate. So we're going to talk about that. And we're going to look at that simple income tax formula. So we're not going to get too complex yet. We'll start out simple with that. Again, we're going to look at the components of the Form 1040. We're going to take a look to determine what tax liability there is and how we calculate tax liability and when a Form 1040 is appropriate. Not everybody has to file. Most people do, but not everybody does. There are certain circumstances under which you don't really have to file a tax return, but they're pretty limited. We're also going to talk about different types of tax authority. We know that taxes are required. Who requires them? What is the process for requiring them? What is the process for implementation of new taxes or changing the tax code? How does all of that happen? So there are different types of tax authority that make the laws, the tax laws, enforce the tax laws, and question the tax laws. That last one, that's the judicial branch. When a taxpayer is challenging a tax law, the judicial branch can get involved. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about this IRS Circular 230. The Circular 230, and like I said, you're going to get a lot of numbers and a lot of acronyms. So the Circular 230 is essentially a document that the IRS put together that outlines what paid tax preparers can do and what they cannot do. Okay, these are paid tax preparers, not volunteer tax preparers, not people who prepare their own tax return, not people who prepare a tax return maybe for their parents or for their kids, but they don't get paid for it. We're talking about people who receive remuneration in exchange for filing those tax returns. I wish I could move that down here, but I can't. So, hold on. Here I go. At least I can scroll up and down. All right. So, and you'll see that this is your textbook. I like to use the textbook. I think it's set out pretty well, organized pretty well, and I don't know, it's just easier for me to explain things using the textbook. First ever income tax, I mentioned this in payroll tax, was in 1861, and it was implemented in order to finance the Civil War. Pretty much all of our taxes, at least through earlier U.S. history, have come into being because of some sort of conflict that we need to fund. Right now, of late, it's not so much that, but the very first one, 1861, but there was no there's nothing in the Constitution about taxes at that point. So there were a lot of people that didn't approve of that. And so Congress repealed that law, which it would have been found unconstitutional anyway, because there's nothing in the Constitution saying that Congress could levy income taxes. So and that was declared unconstitutional in 1895. By 1913, though, we still needed more money. So they ratified the 16th Amendment to the Constitution, which allowed Congress to collect taxes on citizens, on anybody within the U.S. Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived without apportionment among the several states and without regard to any census or enumeration. So we've all heard of the tax deniers out there, people who say, well, it's not in the Constitution. They can't collect my taxes. Well, actually it is. It's pretty plainly in the Constitution that Congress does have the right to do that. Now, we can argue about whether they're too high or not. That's certainly open to a lot of debate, and whether or not the funds that are being collected are actually being used in a worthwhile manner. But there's really no debate about whether or not it is legal for the federal government to collect taxes, because there is a specific amendment for it. This is just information about how many tax returns were filed in certain years and how many were filed electronically. This is just kind of to illustrate the increasing use of electronic returns. I think pretty much almost everybody is filing electronically. There are certain instances where you cannot file electronically if you have specific, trying to think of an example of when you can't file electronically. I don't know, if you've got some certain complication, there are some times when you cannot file electronically. But when you do that, you have to actually attach a form to the return saying the reason why you're not filing electronically. They want you to file electronically. It's easier for everybody. All right, so this is just a little bit about the history. I don't go into a whole lot of detail about this. You guys know how to read. One thing I do want to mention, because I think there might be a homework question on it. They refer to here this Form 1040-SR. Form 1040-SR SR stands for senior. So if you're over a certain age, I don't know what the age is, you get a special tax return to just insult you with bigger print. That's all it is. It's the same information, it's just bigger print. I will tell you that I always suppressed 1040 SRs. I've done a few taxes. I still do a few taxes for some old clients during tax season. I should say old clients. So previous clients. I guess they're still current clients, but I don't do very many tax returns, but several of them are old enough to get the 1040 SR. I suppress that because I'm like, I'm not going to insult you by giving you this 1040 SR. But I think there might be a question in your homework regarding the 1040 SR. So.